Yo, what is going on, guys? Got a video for you here today. 100 men. Does body count matter? Explained by a woman. Let's jump into it. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and your comments.
20% of women in the United States have had 10 or more sexual partners. Compare that to only 2% of women in the 1970s. Now you might be thinking, what's the harm in that? This doesn't actually impact things long term. But you'd be wrong. Women who've had 10 or more sexual partners prior to marriage are 33% more likely to get divorced. More disappointingly, women with multiple premarital partners are significantly less likely to stay married after 5 years.
I mean, what's funny about this is that dudes don't even need the charts and the statistics to explain this. This should just be common sense, guys. But of course, society tries to gaslight men into saying, oh, well, it shouldn't matter. You know, she can go out there and be with 50 guys. As long as she's with you now, that's all that matters. And it's like, at the end of the day, the odds of your relationship working out are obviously significantly less.
And when we look at trends over time, the number of women engaging in premarital sex has increased from 47% in 1954 to 77% in 2003. And if that isn't dismal enough, 65% of women regret casual sex, reporting emotional dissatisfaction and feelings of emptiness.
Did you guys hear that? 65% of women reporting. So first of all, a lot of them are completely lying. It's probably above 77% that are having bedroom fun outside of marriage. So I think that's complete nonsense. I think they're lying there. But how's this for crazy? Okay, 65% of women are reporting, you know, that they regret it. They have emotional dissatisfaction and all of this kind of stuff. This just sounds to me like asking for trouble in terms of women accusing you of things, you know, like women perhaps having an experience with you and then afterwards she might regret it. And so all of a sudden you have police knocking on your door, guys, because apparently she didn't consent. Like, stuff like this is really messed up, but I mean, you know, a lot of women are going out here and then saying that they regret it afterwards. Also, I find it funny that it's reported as emotional dissatisfaction, because you already know what that means. You already know what that means is that they're going out there, they're having fun with dudes, and then they're emotionally dissatisfied because the men don't want to commit to them. Hilarious.
And from an alternative perspective, research shows that women with one or fewer premarital partners have higher levels of satisfaction within their marriage. Our society celebrates women for their sexual liberation, but nobody took the time to ask, at what cost? The uncomfortable truth is that there is a very real link to one's sexual promiscuity as a predictor of future relationship outcomes.
I mean, a lot of people sat there and asked whether or not it was a good thing. They were just completely ignored. You know, like, dudes understand that this is not a good thing. They understand that it's probably a terrible idea. They don't want to marry or date women who have been with a whole bunch of guys, because obviously that's going to lead to bad outcomes. But of course, these men were just insulted. They were labeled as evil, you don't like women, and so on. And
in this video, I'm going to give you 6 reasons why a woman's body count matters more than you think it does. But before I get into it, I want to know what you think. Do you think a woman's body count matters, or are we just making this a big deal for no reason? Now, without further ado, let's get into it. And this brings me to my first point. When I asked my audience why a woman's body count matters, well, the majority of the responses alluded to pair bonding. And this is likely a scenario that we've all seen. The friend who seems to fall head over heels in love, only to lose interest as soon as things get serious. Or the person who says, I just don't feel anything anymore. That feeling of emotional disconnection, well, it may not be random. It could very well be linked to their past. Studies on pair bonding suggest that our ability to form deep emotional connections can be influenced by our sexual history. Now, if you don't know what pair bonding is, it's a biological phenomenon. Hormones like oxytocin released during intimacy, pregnancy, breastfeeding, and childbirth enhances trust and strengthens emotional bonds. However, studies suggest that the release of oxytocin with multiple sexual partners reduces its effectiveness, and this will inevitably impact future relationships. Now, it's important to note here that women specifically rely heavily on oxytocin for bonding, whereas men rely primarily on vasopressin, which is a hormone associated with territorial and protective behaviors in a relationship. Likely why many men say that they feel responsible for a woman when they fall in love with her. But it's important to point this out. The hormonal difference here means that women may experience deeper attachment than men do when it comes to sexual intimacy. intimacy. And this makes their choices around these decisions much more impactful long term. With the current narrative in society pushing women to act and behave like men, and any pushback being judgmental, envious, or insecure, I have to ask, what if there is a good reason for women to protect their sexuality?
Just by the way, I would also extend this to men. I've seen research that suggests it's not a good idea for men either. The reason why I think it's bad for dudes to go out here and do this sort of stuff is, I mean, if you're dealing with these women, at one point or another, man, you're probably going to catch some sort of disease. You know, you're going to get robbed or something. Your tires are going to get slashed, and so on. I think it's a bad idea for men to do this as well, just for the record. If you want to go out there and be with a whole bunch of different women, I personally think it's probably a pretty unsafe thing to do. I don't really think it's good for either gender to be going out there and doing. People are welcome to make their own decisions. I don't really care. But I actually don't think it's good for either gender, to be honest with you.
The female brain's reward system can adapt to this experience, making them less responsive to emotional bonds long term. And when it comes to women who've had these experiences, well, most of them don't have healthy, secure attachments. Women with multiple past partners may develop something called an avoidant attachment style. When a woman has an avoidant attachment style, she will be reluctant to depend on her partner and tends to emotionally withdraw to avoid vulnerability. The alternative outcome here is having an anxious attachment style. These women will tend to seek validation through sexual intimacy, and this all comes from the root fear of abandonment and a need for reassurance. And women who use casual sex as a means of validation may struggle to transition to long-term sustainable relationships because they're based on mutual emotional support and stability, which impacts attachment style and ultimately security. In a nutshell, repeated casual relationships can reinforce patterns of avoidance or anxiety. Well, it brings me to my next point. 70% of divorces are initiated by women, and I talked about this at length in my divorce video. But there are deeper signs of stability and long-term investment that we can investigate here.
So just by the way, as far as I understand it, yes, 70% of divorces are initiated by women, but it's actually a bit worse than that. I think it's actually 70 to 80%, and then it goes as high as 90% if the woman is quote-unquote college educated. All this to say that men's odds aren't particularly great, okay? Marriage is a complete scam for men. Men risk a lot in order to get married to a woman. Oftentimes the women risk nothing at all and they have a lot to gain from the marriage. So I think it's a terrible idea for men. But if you're a dude and you're going to go out here and you think that you're just going to marry some woman who's been with 20 dudes, let me tell you something, that is not going to work out very well for you in the long run. You might have a relationship that lasts a few years, but guess what, guys? Inevitably, she will probably leave you. And oftentimes, these women like to wait for a certain duration before they leave you so that they can ensure that they take your crap with them.
Women with 5 or more sexual partners prior to marriage have a 30% increased likelihood of divorce, while women who had sex for the first time in their teens have roughly double the risk of divorce later on in life compared to women who had their first unmarried sexual experience in their adult life. Interestingly enough, women who've had greater premarital sexual partners experience lower marital satisfaction and face higher divorce rates. And on a more
yeah, so of course, what they do is they go out there, they get with a bunch of dudes, and then the simp that they end up with, the unlucky man who they end up with, she doesn't respect him. She's not attracted to him, right? Because they're always thinking about the dudes that they were with previously. It's a comparison thing. You know, she's gone out there, she's been with 35 different men, and then, you know, number 36, she gets with John over here. Sorry to those of you who are watching whose name is John. But like, let's just say she gets with lucky number 36, Mr. John. This guy is going to be compared to every other dude that she has ever been with. You know, John's great. He's a nice man. He does everything for me. But, you know, he didn't make as much money as so-and-so back in the day, right? Or his car isn't as cool, or he's not quite as physically attractive. And usually what it does boil down to as well is the physical attraction, because the guys who are highly physically attractive, who have a bunch of options with women, these are the men that the women were never really able to lock down, right? So all of those guys who hinted that they wanted a relationship, but they didn't really, and the woman had like a 6-month-long situationship where she hooked up with him twice a week. You know, those guys, those guys were typically quite attractive, but she can never lock them down. So what happens is when she goes on and she gets married to some, some dude down the line, she's always going to be thinking back to that previous guy. She's going to feel unhappy, and she will want to return to the clubs to have another shot at that man or a different one that's like him. And the funny thing is, a lot of these women do this, and then they realize that they can't actually get attention from men anymore. It's absolutely hilarious.
Dismal level, women who've had multiple premarital sexual partners may subconsciously compare those people to their current husband, leading to dissatisfaction if their expectations aren't met. It's also important to note that each relationship can leave an emotional imprint. Women with more past partners may carry unresolved feelings or trauma, and this can complicate trust and intimacy in a marriage. Ultimately, a history with multiple partners can create trust issues. If one partner perceives the other as less committed due to their sexual history, there may be resistance in going that deep with somebody, and inevitably, as much as you want to love them, you keep them at arm's length. And this brings me to my next point, seeking validation as a form of intimacy. As I alluded to earlier, the liberation of women seems to be a cause for freedom without responsibility, and that sounds a lot like entitlement. However, there are specific proclivities when it comes to personality dimensions that make a woman more likely to behave in this manner. Promiscuity in women is a multifaceted phenomenon, and this is influenced by personality traits, life experiences, and cultural contexts. For some, it reflects a sense of adventure and openness to new experiences. For others, it may stem from deeper emotional patterns or external pressure. Understanding the psychological and personality dimensions associated with promiscuity can offer insights to the motivations and potential challenges faced by women engaging in casual sexual behaviors.
Yeah, see guys, here's the thing. I kind of just zoned out during this part. Here's the thing about these videos is oftentimes it sounds like the women, they don't actually understand the positions of men or why men believe these things. Sometimes it just seems to me like they're reading off a ChatGPT script, like just something that they've read on the internet. They don't fully grasp it. Like I tune out for 2 seconds and we're over here talking about motivations and potential challenges for the women and their openness. Like, here's the thing, guys, men don't give a damn. You know what I mean? Like, men don't, she's got some potential challenges and that's why she's having these relationships and hooking up with 500 different dudes. Sorry, I don't particularly care. I'm just going to skip a little bit ahead here and go to the this next section. Let's continue.
And studies show a strong correlation between high levels of extroversion and sexual activity. Real-world examples would be like the increased likelihood of hookup culture across college campuses, where socializing often intertwines with casual sexual experiences. And for these women, promiscuity can be a natural extension of their sociability and enjoyment of new interactions. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on narcissistic personality traits. Grandiosity and a focus on self-gratification can also influence promiscuous behavior. Women with these traits may use sexual relationships as a means to boost self-esteem, gain admiration, or exert control. Research in the dark triad found that individuals high in these personality traits tend to engage in these short-term mating strategies.
Yeah, right. So essentially, a lot of these women who are out here engaging in this particular behavior, oftentimes they're incredibly narcissistic, and they're not the best individuals all around. I mean, this makes sense. True. Again, I don't have anything to really necessarily disagree with here. It just sounds to me like the woman is perhaps taking the things that men have said and ChatGPT and then putting them into the video. I don't know if she actually, a lot of the women who make these sorts of videos, guys, they don't actually get behind what they say. They don't believe it. And so on. They just kind of write the scripts and then go along with it. Or at least they, sometimes they get AI to do it for them.
And the rise of social media platforms like OnlyFans has provided opportunities for individuals to monetize their sexuality, while they're also able to maintain emotional detachment. And this behavior is often aligned with narcissistic traits. Sensation-seeking women who prioritize novel and intense experiences often view sex as another outlet for thrill and excitement. Studies like Zuckerman's work on sensation-seeking link this trait to adventurous and sometimes risky sexual behavior. Examples include the popularity of travel-based dating experiences, or apps, or the experimentation of sexual subcultures, where the focus is on exploration over commitment. For these women,
I mean, this is a little bit vague, guys, but I've heard about this a lot. I'm kind of just extrapolating a bit here. There are lots of women who like to say that they go on a healing journey and stuff like this, and then they go to other countries, they do traveling, they make a lot of overseas quote unquote friends, as they say. And all of these are just fluff words for she went overseas, she had fun with a whole bunch of different dudes. And then women like to pass this off as though it's some sort of healing journey where they learned a lot about themselves. But really, that's not the case at all. What they've actually done is they've just gone out there, they've smashed a bunch of dudes, and then they try and convince their future husband, who is perhaps naive to this sort of thing, that she was just on a healing journey. You know, like, again, lots of this language is used where women will say one thing and then they'll just mean a completely different one, guys. To me, whenever a woman starts talking to me about like a journey or something like this, or healing and all of these sorts of things, or personal journeys, growth, and so on, my alarm bells start ringing, man. I just think that the woman's a complete psycho. She's probably hooked up with 500 different dudes, and then she tries to pass it off as some sort of, spiritual enlightenment that she understood.
Women, promiscuity is a side effect of their desire for new experiences versus creating emotional bonds. Now, attachment theory provides a really good framework for how past experiences can influence future behavior. Women with avoidant attachment styles may engage in casual sex as a way to avoid vulnerability and maintain emotional distance, while those with an anxious attachment may seek intimacy as a means of validation. For example, women with a history of unstable relationships or childhood neglect struggle to form strong emotional bonds, and this can lead them to turn to short-term encounters as a coping mechanism. Studies in attachment theory consistently show that insecure attachments are linked to difficulties in forming and maintaining emotional intimacy. Now, cultural and social factors also play a large role in shaping promiscuity. In liberal societies, women feel more free exploring their own sexual liberation and proclivities without the fear of judgment. For example, the sexual revolution in the 1960s saw a large increase in casual sexual behavior as women started to reject traditional norms.
I find it funny that this whole thing, by the way, is labeled as strong and independent. You know, like it's something good for women, it's empowering, and so on. I find this to be absolutely hilarious because when you see the same women who call this crap empowering start to cry on TikTok in their cars, you know, it really makes you call into question what they mean when they use words like empowering. Because to me, guys, I really think it does a lot of damage to women, to be honest with you. You know, they'll go out there, they'll hook up with a bunch of dudes, they'll fail to get commitment, they'll now have a bunch of baggage. A lot of them will now be unable to pair bond, and their future relationships will completely and utterly suffer as a result of this. And they're crying in their cars, complaining. And I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, what happened to this was so strong and empowering? Because a lot of the women, guys, who get to like 32 and they're still single, they've been screwing around this whole entire time. You really think that they feel empowered? I think a lot of them feel rather concerned that their biological clock is closing and they can't have a family in too long, you know? But again, this is what the women wanted. They wanted that strong and independent lifestyle, do whatever the hell they want. It's very empowering. And so who are we to deny them such a decision as liberated women?
And a study in the archives of sexual behavior highlights how cultural attitudes towards sex influence behavior. Now, I do want to highlight that many people use sexual intercourse as a coping mechanism. So for some women, sexual intercourse or promiscuity is less about personality dimensions and more of a coping mechanism to maintain any level of emotional survival.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. I don't particularly care. I think we're getting into the weeds about this. Oh, here are the reasons why women might do it, and it's because they feel this way and they're looking for emotional connection and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, trying to date or marry women who do this stuff is a complete waste of your time. You know, if you want to date the woman who's hitting up the club and she's been with a bunch of the dudes in the town that you're in, you're going to find that you're just wasting your time. You know, and I think dudes intrinsically understand this. And this is also why a lot of these women fail to get relationships as well. Oh, I thought he liked me, but then at the end, you know, he didn't actually want to have a committed relationship with me. Because this kind of crap is incredibly repulsive to men. I'll often see women say the same thing. They'll try and say the same crap about men. They'll say, you know, oh, well, I refuse to get with a guy who, you know, if he's been with that many women, then he's used up and he's disgusting and I'm not going to get with him. And to that, I would say, okay, good. But the thing is, women never follow their own advice, guys. Right? When was the last time you guys saw a woman reject a dude because he was too good with women. Because he'd been with too many women. It really just doesn't happen, guys, right? Because a lot of these dudes who do this, they're incredibly, confident. Oftentimes they're incredibly attractive. They're smooth. They've done it 1,000 times, and so the women don't go, oh, wow, I'm not going to get with him because he's been with too many women. It's like, it actually just ends up attracting even more women. The dudes who get a lot of women, it just makes it easier for them to get more women. You see what I mean? But you have these girls in their comments and they're like, yeah, well, these men are disgusting for doing the same thing, but they continue to go out there and date those same men. I find it so funny, guys, because if women actually refuse to date those men, I would understand. I would say, you know what? That's your preference. That's your boundary. That's totally fine. It's probably a good one to have. But they don't do that, guys. They go out there and they chase the bad boys who have been with a whole bunch of women, and then they complain when they get heartbroken. It's hilarious.
And who have experienced trauma or adverse childhood experiences may turn to sex as a means of regaining control or coping with unresolved emotions. The ACEs study, which is incredibly insightful, found connections between early trauma and sexual behavior, specifically in adulthood. For these women, promiscuity is often a complicated interplay of seeking connection while also managing deep-seated emotional pain. That's right, sexualizing discomfort isn't only unique to men. For many women, sexualizing themselves, or their sexuality in general, is the only tool that they've developed for managing stress, discomfort, sadness, loneliness, or feelings of unworthiness. What most people find, if they're open to looking, is that seeking comfort or validation this way can be like pouring water through a pasta strainer.
Yeah, I mean, none of them are ever going to end up happy. I don't care, like, oh, we're looking for this, and what all the things she listed here, guys. These women, they're just helpless and they use this as an emotional coping mechanism. Again, at the end of the day, these are not women who are wifeable. These are not women who are capable of being mothers. If they want to go out there and live the party lifestyle and get with a whole bunch of dudes, that's totally fine. I don't even care, guys. Like, I really don't care. I don't think the majority of dudes give a damn what modern day women choose to do anymore. But, if you're trying to paint it out like somehow you're the victim and you're trying to cope with your life and things like this, I'm sorry, but you won't get any empathy from me personally. I don't think you'll get a lot of empathy from other men either. I think they'll just hear this and be like, okay, sounds stupid. Do whatever you got to do. I'm out. And the dudes will just not commit to you. And that's how it'll play out.
Like pouring water through a pasta strainer. What most people are seeking is connection and intimacy, and sex without either of these is often empty and meaningless. Using sex to try to right a wrong, make up, or connect is simply using the wrong tool for the actual job. And this brings me to my next and maybe most important point. Now, this may be an uncomfortable truth, but you can't divorce your sexual values from all of your other values. They are intertwined, and promiscuity begets dysfunction in relationships. In the fabric of human values, sexual behavior is deeply intertwined with other core values, such as loyalty, self-control, and long-term commitment. You can't compartmentalize your sexual values from the rest of your life. They reflect and influence how you approach commitments, relationships, and even your sense of self-worth. Promiscuity, while often framed as personal freedom, has psychological and behavioral implications that ripple into relational dysfunction. The choices we make in our personal lives, particularly in intimate matters, are not isolated. They reveal deeper truths about who we are and what we value. Take, for instance, the concept of delayed gratification. It's the ability to sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term gain. And this is a skill that underpins successful relationships. On top of that, will impact careers and your personal development. And in the context of sexual behavior, promiscuity reflects a lack in the ability to delay gratification, favoring transient pleasures over deeper emotional and relational rewards. This tendency not only influences individual behavior, but undermines the stability required for enduring a long-term partnership. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of integrating your values into a cohesive framework that drives your behavior.
Okay, I don't know what that, we're just getting lost in the weeds, man. We're just throwing words around at this point. Okay. Again, I think that this woman, we've covered her recently, like maybe a month or two ago. She made a video and it sounded to me like she didn't particularly empathize with men whatsoever. I think this woman probably makes just chat GPT scripts and reads them off, because we're getting a little bit lost in the source here. at the end of the day, guys, men understand that trying to wife up, date, or marry a woman who's been with a whole bunch of dudes is a complete waste of their time. And that's enough to be said about the matter. I think we're going to leave it there. I can't really listen to this ChatGPT script anymore, so I think we're going to leave it there. Guys, don't forget to leave your thoughts and your comments. Make sure you guys take care of yourselves, and I'll be seeing you all in the next one. Peace.